preaching, Kurt. I want to welcome everybody to Sabbath school this morning. I'm not sure if this is picking up or not. We'll move it up a little. Okay. And for our lesson, we're starting a new lesson this quarter. And it's entitled Three Cosmic Messages. Do you know what chapter in the Bible that comes from? Revelation chapter 14. Three cosmic messages. If you see the light there on the front of the church. I'm going to start out by reading this introduction. How many of you read the introduction to the Sabbath school lesson? Oh, well, maybe I won't. I'll just summarize it. Everybody read it. I'm impressed. I just want to summarize what it is because I think it really sets the stage nicely for the coming study that we'll be doing in Revelation chapter 14. It's pretty amazing. 1844 was a pretty significant year in a lot of ways, wasn't it? In 1844, Friedrich Nietzsche was born. You know who he was? Famous atheist who had nothing to do with and had a lot to say about the Christian God, who he proclaimed way back then was dying in the West. In 1844, Karl Marx was born. No, he wasn't born. He wrote his first essay called Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844. Friedrich Nietzsche, Karl Marx, and the third one, who was the third one? Darwin, yeah. Charles Darwin wrote his first essay of 1844. And I think so, what else happened in 1844? Yeah, thank you. The Great Disappointment in 1844, and the seeds out of that, the leftovers of the Great Disappointment, the seeds were planted that would burgeon into a worldwide movement whose core message repudiates the guts of Marxist Nietzscheism and Darwinian ideology. We're working on getting the sound worked out. Okay. So, in answer to all of these philosophies that were percolating, and there were many more, during this period of history, God had already prepared and planted a message in His Word, written by the prophet John, disciple of Jesus, way back on the Isle of Patmos at the first century. God planted in the book of Revelation the answer to all of these philosophies that as we look around the world today, we're seeing the fruit of them all around us. Yes, Sam.
Yeah, I prefer to think that 1844 was about what actually happened. And that is that Jesus went into the most holy place.
Yes.
And that's very important in terms of our salvation and what we do. And so often we emphasize the great disappointment and we talk about it so much, but we don't emphasize the fact that His work in the heavenly sanctuary continues.
Yes, and in fact, how does that impact us would be my question. What difference does it make? The fact that He is now ministering in the most holy place, in that phase of His ministry, what does that mean to us? What is that? How does that impact us? Kurt, welcome.
Yes. Sorry, we've had some technical challenges this morning. I think we're on track now.
Anybody want to jump into, Kara? We have a comment over here. Jean wants to say something.
Well, for me, how does it impact me? It's wonderful to know, as you follow the Bible, how it's being fulfilled each step along the way. So we know where we are in history.
Yes.
But it's also wonderful because we know we're near Christ's second coming. But it's also, I don't want to say fearful, but it is in a way that we're sure we're ready.
It heightens our attention, certainly. Gets our attention.
And, you know, we were talking yesterday. Have you guys noticed, has the world changed at all in the last 10 years? You can hardly recognize it in some ways. I mean, of course, COVID really sped up that process. But can you see how easy it would be to shut down buying and selling?
No.
Just like that.
They can turn you off at a computer switch.
That's right. And so many things that we are seeing, they're kind of slow, but yet when you look back, you see how many changes there have been that I think are confirming what we have been told in these revelations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. And we're so grateful that we have a high priest who is ministering in our behalf. He defends us against the accuser of the brethren. He is there before God, standing to defend us. And sometimes you wonder, are we worth defending?
Yeah. You know the title of this day's lesson is Jesus Wins, Satan Loses.
Amen.
The problem is, I see Satan winning and Jesus losing.
Too much. So what do you mean
I mean,
by that?
is that kind of reality today? Does it seem like Jesus is winning in our culture today? I have a hard time saying that, but it's nice to know the end score, what is going to be at the end. But that's what's so interesting about it, because Satan is going to take and God's going to give him every opportunity to say, this is my government. This is how I would run things.
Yeah. Carolyn.
Last night, I read through the Adventist World magazine for this month. I don't know if you've read it or not.
Not yet.
It's talking about the unfinished work.
Yeah.
It is appalling. I'm glad that finally they're talking about it, because I've been talking about it a long time. The problem is, people think it is written and Adventist World Radio are going to finish the work.
Yeah.
But when you look numerically at the population that don't have access to that or don't know that it exists, it's terrible. And I don't know where we are now. I guess I've lived too long, because when I was growing up in kindergarten, primary division, they were talking about missionaries going out, and it was just a given that we were supposed to go. Now we're talking about Adventist World Radio is going to finish the work. No, I find many, many people that never heard of it, and they're thrilled to know about it when they find out about it. But I don't think that we really think that we're in the last days. I don't think so. Just looking around in the Adventist church, we aren't out there.
There's a lot to do, isn't there?
And really, don't we understand though that if it was left to us, we probably wouldn't get it done.
Well.
But we know that God will even use the rocks to speak out if He needs to get this message out. So I agree with you, and I agree with these ministries are doing some things, but they're certainly not going to be. We don't just sit back and wait for them to do it, because it's going to take every one of us to do it.
That is right.
See, I keep hearing about how the angels will finish the work. But there's a statement in Ellen White's writings, I think I have it written somewhere at home, where it talks as if not until more than half the Adventist church is really engaged in giving the gospel will the Lord perform miracles to finish the work. And we don't have it, apparently.
Yeah, well, that's something we need to pray for and pursue.
And we're in a battle.
Yeah, we're in a battle.
That's very real.
Yep.
And that's what's described in our opening Sabbath lesson for this week. Revelation chapter 12, Jesus wins, Satan loses. And our text, our memory text, is Revelation 12:17. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. Now, what does that word war mean? What is this? Was this hand-to-hand combat in heaven? What is this about?
There's so much in this verse.
Yeah,
that
there
if
is.
we want to take and break it down, we'll be here for the rest of the time. And the dragon was enraged with the woman. Okay, should we start identifying some things, and
Sure.
then we'll get into war?
Dragon was...
Okay, who's the dragon?
Satan.
Who's the woman? The church. Okay, and went to make war.
War. What does it mean to make war? What's that? Persecution.
Conflict.
Conflict. Do you know what this word is in the
Deception.
Greek? Deception. In the Greek, he went to make polemo. Polemo. You ever heard the word polemic? Mm-hmm. He went to make polemic war. There was an argument in heaven. Who's right? Who's wrong? Was there hand, like I asked a second ago, was there hand-to-hand combat?
I don't think so.
You know, guns and swords and all that?
In heaven?
In heaven?
I don't think so.
No, probably not. But there was a battle. And it's a battle that's going on today. And we just read about it there in the introduction with Nietzsche and Darwin and all of these philosophers that have come along and left the seeds in our culture that are now sprouting, and we're reaping the fruit today.
So the war is?
The war is a war of ideas,
Yeah.
a war of understanding, a war of God saying, my government is based on unselfish giving love.
Yeah, and my government is also made on complete freedom of choice.
Freedom of choice.
So if you're giving somebody a complete freedom of choice, then what they choose is what you go for. I mean, that's what the devil says. Okay, well, I can change their choices.
Yeah.
And that's where deception comes in and leads you down that road. So the war is a war of who am I going to follow? Who, the conflict in my mind.
Whose kingdom
Yes.
has the values that I am going to follow, that are true, that are worth following.
It reminds me of a quote in the Student Movement magazine that I went when I was in Andrews, and this was during the time of the conflict with Ford. What was his first name?
Desmond.
Desmond. And it says, does Ford have a better idea?
It's a conflict of ideas.
Yeah, it's a conflict of ideas.
That's right.
And we have a comment back here.
We're back to this war. Back in the 80s, I went to a general conference session to visit, and I had made reservations in a very inexpensive hotel, but somehow or another they got their reservations mixed up and they ran out of rooms, so they placed me in the fanciest, biggest hotel in the town.
Praise God.
I have never seen such beauty in a building, anywhere, anytime. And after the general conference meeting that night, I got on the bus that took us to that hotel, and I noticed there an Ethiopian pastor that I had known when I worked in Ethiopia. He had come as a delegate. in his shabby suit. He also had been transferred to this gorgeous hotel. And when I saw him, I said, "Oh, Pastor, we have to visit." And he said, "Yes, we do." So when we got off the bus and went into this palace, they had a regulation, you wore formal clothes after 9 o'clock in the lobby. We just kind of sneaked in to the side, and I said, "Pastor, we have to find a quiet little place to visit." They had an orchestra playing nice classical music. The whole scene was splendor. But we found a little dark corner to crawl into with 2 chairs. And I said, "Pastor, I want you to tell me the most beautiful story that has happened in your life since I left Ethiopia." And he said, "Oh, sister, I can tell you the most beautiful." And he started in. This was during the communist Chinese invasion of Ethiopia. The communists had come in from China and taken over. And he said they didn't allow any young people to go to church if they were under 18 years of age.
Oh, my.
So we're out, he says, we lived out on the mission compound in Gimbi. And I had 2 daughters. One was 13, one was 15. And he said, they let it be known all over that compound that none of those young people were to go to Sabbath school or church. He said, my daughters and some more decided we would get up early in the morning, and in secret, one would leave, they'd go different directions. They had a different place to meet every week, and they would secretly spend 3 hours getting there secretly. And he said, I was a pastor, I had churches out in the countryside, and I came home one day and discovered that these communists had discovered these children going to church. And they had pieces of broken glass. They cut their knees till they were bleeding to keep them from kneeling down in prayer. The next week, he said, I came back from my church, and I noticed at the prison, they had a barbed wire fence around a compound, and people were gathered out there watching. And he said, what are they watching? And they said, oh, Pastor, the police are beating your girls. And he worked his way right up to the barbed wire fence. One of them was lying unconscious there on the ground. And the other one was being beaten by 2 policemen with big sticks. I said, Pastor, you're telling me the most beautiful story you know. He said, Carolyn, I said to them, Jesus said, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give you a crown of life. Don't give in. Don't give in. And he said, I knew one of those girls was unconscious. And here they're beating the other one. They'd stop and they'd say, are you going to give up? She'd say, no. And he'd say, be faithful to death. Now I'm listening to this with all this palace out here. The contrast was amazing. He said both those girls were unconscious. And the police called to me and said, take your dead girls home and bury them. And I said, Pastor, what then? He said, I got some friends. We took them home. They were unconscious. We dressed their wounds, and pretty soon they came to life. And I said, where are they now? He said, we were able to slip them out of Ethiopia to another country. They finished college. They're secretaries in the mission offices. He said, this is the most beautiful story I know to tell you. And the orchestra played on.
So that's a very real battle, isn't it?
That one definitely was.
Yeah.
Well, it was a battle of the mind as well.
Yeah.
Because the girls wouldn't give.
That is right.
They wouldn't give in.
They would remain faithful even unto death.
So a battle happened in heaven.
That's right. And it says he went out to make war with whom? The remnant. The rest, the remnant of her offspring. Yeah, Trish.
You know, you mentioned God is giving in that war, and I think sometimes that war can boil down to, are we going to give or are we going to get? Because God's character is clear that he's always giving, and we sure like to get.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that when you give, you get.
Yeah.
And that's
Give
that's.
and it shall
but
be
now it may not be
given.
immediate, but you give and you give and you give, and there will be a reward.
So he went off to make war with the rest, or the remnant, of her offspring. Whose offspring is, who's her? The church. It's the woman. Went off to make war with the rest of her offspring who do what?
Keep the commandments.
Keep the commandments of God.
And the testimony of
And
Jesus.
have the testimony of Jesus Christ.
Okay, well, I learned something last night. What is the testimony of Jesus?
Spirit of prophecy, yeah.
And where do we come up? Where do we come up with that?
Revelation 19:10.
Revelation 19:10
Yeah.
says. Shall we look at it? Does somebody have it? There you go. Jean's got it over there.
No, that was a little confusing to me for several years, the testimonies. And we always seem to jump to the conclusion that it's Ellen White. And I don't disbelieve that, but I just couldn't put it all together. And as time's gone along in study, I understand that, because we'll have prophets clear to the end, if you believe she's a prophet. But for me, even now, the testimonies, it's easier for me to understand to say that it's the writers throughout the whole Bible. They give the testimony about Jesus' plan. I know Ellen White does that, but I think for me, it also refers back to all the writers of the Bible, given the testifying about Jesus.
Or witnessing to Jesus.
Yeah, that's exactly where I would say. I had naively thought that the testimony of Jesus was my testimony to the world. But now I was corrected, and they say, no, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and I agree with you. I went, so those who keep the, keep the Ten Commandments and have the testimony of Jesus, does that mean Ellen White? And I'm like, no. The testimony of Jesus is from the dawn of time until the end of time. And so there are, anybody that is speaking of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Am I right or wrong?
Well, if they have the gift of prophecy.
Yeah.
The spirit of prophecy were his prophets throughout time.
Yeah.
But this specifically in Revelation 12:17 is now talking about the remnant.
Yeah.
The remnant. We are that remnant.
So it is our testimony.
No.
No.
We are that remnant.
Yeah.
And so this can also specifically speak to Ellen White, who is the prophet within our church during this last period of time.
So you get the context, and I would agree.
Get the context of the remnant.
The context of this passage, Revelation 12, verse 17.
Went after the rest of her offspring.
So we're talking about the rest of her offspring at what time? At what period of history?
Well,
Now,
end time.
now,
Yeah,
end time.
It would be the end time
Yeah.
period. And so that gift will be evident among the remnant.
Very specifically, and her offspring. Who do what? Who keep the commandments, have the testimony of Jesus.
Yeah, the gift of prophecy will be present among God's people, the remnant, at the end of time. Yeah.
You can apply it throughout history.
Right.
You can also apply it specifically to
Yeah. So during this time, the spirit of prophecy seems to be the latest prophet.
Well, what does Joel 2 say?
I don't know.
Young men will dream
Dream
dreams,
dreams, okay.
and
Sure.
and the others will see visions. So yes, that spirit of prophecy will be present at the end of time, and that's what Joel was talking about. That's what John's talking about.
So you're saying that it isn't isolated to Ellen White?
Not necessarily. She's a prophet.
Sure.
So, and she's among the remnant.
Right.
So that would apply to this passage. But will there be others? Can there be others? Oh, certainly. The gift of prophecy is a gift that's within the church. Is that
Anybody? Everybody clear on that? Okay, I've got a question.
Well, back to jumping, in a sense, to Ellen White. We always do that. I remember that as a kid, but my concern is, if I'm giving a Bible study to somebody, and I come to this verse after many studies, and I jump to Ellen White, if I haven't laid the groundwork like we do, I think it puts up a barrier. It sounds like another denomination that has their prophets. So I like going back to say the testimony of Jesus, which has taken me a long time to get there, is from the beginning of time. They're all testifying about him throughout the Bible. And then we know that the gift of prophecy will never end, but it takes a while to put that together and chew on it and think about it and pray about it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that you take somebody who is not familiar with the church at all and then just kind of go through this and say, well, that's Ellen White. No, I don't. You have to build the groundwork for that, if there is. And I'm not even saying that that's right or wrong, but what I mean, did all the prophets throughout history? Did they? I thought prophecy was teaching about Christ.
witnessing to Christ?
Witnessing about Christ. All prophets didn't fortune tell. Didn't tell the future.
Okay.
Did I say that right? Didn't tell the future, right? Some prophets just testified of God or of Jesus.
Sure.
They did not talk about future events.
Okay.
So when you say gift of prophecy, did they have the gift of prophecy? I'm challenging that, because does a prophet always have to be a telling of the future, or is a prophet just telling? No. Okay. So how do we know if somebody has the gift of prophecy?
Yeah, thanks.
They do not speak according to these words, to the law and the testimony.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
They don't teach.
and that's the application, with Jean, thinking about, no, do I think Ellen White has the gift of prophecy expressed in her life and writings? Absolutely.
Yes.
Do I make you, do I tell you, oh, you got to believe the same thing? What I say to you is, to the law and to the testimony,
Right.
check her out.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. It seems like that most people that have a resistance to the idea of her being a prophet have never read anything that she has.
Maybe
Okay.
that's very true.
This spirit of prophecy is mentioned in connection with, here are they that keep the commandments of God. And in Great Controversy, Ellen White indicates that the Sabbath commandment really came, about 1844, along in there, as far as being present truth was concerned. So apparently, the Sabbath and the spirit of prophecy were together, but I think that there is real value in believing that there were prophets in the Bible all the way through.
Absolutely.
And we do believe the Bible. We
Sure.
believe all of it, as well as the spirit of prophecy.
Have some people misused these passages in a way to try to justify their beliefs and make them feel like, yeah, I got it all figured out, and you need to figure it out too.
Yeah, and as long as you figure it out my way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here and then there.
I think we're a little confused on the role of a prophet in our discussion here. Prophets do several things. One is they talk about present conditions.
Sure.
You find that throughout Scripture. You go back to Daniel. He was dealing with present, but he also prophesied the future. So they are not just prophets of the future, but they're also revealers of issues currently. That's what Ellen White did. That's what every Bible prophet did. They talked about now and tried to reform the people, bring them back to God, or they talked what was going to come.
Yep. Good point.
Okay.
Good
all
point.
right.
Good comment.
Yeah, so they have several roles.
And they're not always the same.
Right.
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful because we can often fall into the trap of following phrases and ideas. And two things that you've pointed out thus far in the lesson that are very important, and I'm glad you've made that clear. And that is that the term spirit of prophecy is certainly a global term. It is not something confined only to Ellen White, but it is important. The other thing is that many in the church today are waiting for world war or world events to tell them how near Jesus' coming is, and when they have to get ready, or when things are getting bad, or when we have to leave the cities, and when we have to get out. And they get this anxiety about them, and the devil loves that when we feel that way, because it is when we are complacent. It is in our everyday Christianity, not when we're being persecuted, but it is in the choices we make every day that we reveal if we have the character of God.
Yeah.
It's not when we're running away. That's just not going to happen like that. And we have to be careful. There may be some who've been running away for years for a lot of reasons. And there will be a time when we have to run. And maybe some will even have to go to the hills. But the reality now is that we are one day closer to our demise. And if that is true, then we are also closer to the second coming of Christ.
Sure.
Yeah, and so the testimony of Jesus, I want to make sure people understand what this is. What is the testimony of Jesus then? We know in Revelation 19 it says the spirit of prophecy. But is not the keeping of the commandments and the testimony of Jesus something that somebody should look on you, Richard, and say, he is one of those that keep the commandment and have the testimony of Jesus?
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm just saying that if the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and the spirit of prophecy is God's prophets throughout history, why is it saying that he went after those who kept the commandments and have the testimony of Jesus, would they be able to see the testimony of Jesus in me or in you? Shouldn't they be able to? And if that's the case, how can it be both the spirit of prophecy and a testimony? Because I hope that my life is a testimony.
It sounds to me like you're trying to reinterpret the text to say, to say that the testimony of Jesus is my witness to him.
My witness to who?
Jesus.
No, it's my witness to you.
About Jesus.
About Jesus.
Sure.
Is it?
That's not what the text is saying.
Okay, all right. Well, I want to make sure that I got this clear.
You know, I've talked with individuals that are Mormons, that are Jehovah's Witnesses, and they have a good witness. I was blessed by some of their conversation when I was canvassing. They were good people. They had a good spiritual witness about Christ, and they had a prophet, right? Mm-hmm. So aren't they right in the right category? Because they had a prophet.
But do they keep all the Ten Commandments?
Yeah, there you go.
Or to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, there is no light in them.
Okay, so wrap it up, Richard.
Okay, so we understand that the devil, in this context, in this passage, at this time, in the history of the world, this passage is referencing a specific group of people and their characteristics. Their characteristics are the fact that they keep the commandments of God and they have demonstrated among them the gift of prophecy. Does that limit, are we saying by that that's only Ellen White? No. We're just saying that they're going to have this gift of prophecy demonstrated within that community of believers. And
yeah, not individually. So is it corporately?
Yeah, you could say that.
One more comment back here.
I understand everything you're saying makes sense to me, but my other thought is that that verse doesn't say that they keep only the Ten Commandments. We don't, as Adventists, we're really pretty definite on the fourth commandment. And so we really zero in on the 10 commandments. But we also believe the whole Bible, the testimony about Jesus in the stories or events that have happened. It's the whole Bible. It's not just the 10 commandments.
That's good.
Yeah, okay, she's going.
Well, reference Mike's comment. Pastor Cox always said it, that at the last days, people in other denominations will come forward and honor the Sabbath day. They may not do it today, but say Christ comes 3 weeks from now. At 2 weeks, they will see the Sabbath day, Saturday is the holy day, and will follow it. But he made it clear, all other denominations will be a part of it. It's just not going to be an Adventist heaven. It's going to be, a Jew, Pentecostal, Catholic, Lutheran. It's going to be everybody.
Sure.
And they honor Christ and his days.
Sure.
That's right.
Absolutely.
The thing is, the Sabbath will become prominent. There will be a law about it.
A law against it, right.
Exactly. And that's when people who haven't really understood will understand and change. That's when it will happen.
Sure.
It's kind of like the standard that's going to be held up. Are you going to follow those that do Sunday? Are you going to follow those that do Saturday? And that kind of becomes the final choice. So am I right on that?
Sure. I think one of the things that we struggle with even now as Adventists is this idea of using these texts to prove something that they aren't intended to prove, and to try to make them identify me as a person who is a Seventh-day Adventist, therefore, boy, I've got it all figured out and I'm going to heaven. Well, the reality is, you know, you said that a lot of Lutherans and Catholics and Jews or whoever in Islam will join together in this community of believers at the end of time. That's really true. But the reality is, a lot of us, hopefully none of us here, but a lot, in fact, we're told that the majority will leave the church. And all these others will come in. So don't feel so all that in a bag of chips, because we're all humble servants of the Lord Jesus Christ. Whether we are attending church today on Sabbath or tomorrow on Sunday, there will be a coming together of those folks as one community at one point, just prior to the return of Jesus. Let me add one more thing, then we'll get Hugh. When I said just prior to the coming of Jesus, the reality is it's happening now. It's happening now. And that's the prophetic picture. The prophetic picture is that since 1844, God has been separating the wheat from the chaff, and the devil has been gathering his armies, and God is gathering his people for that final battle of Armageddon. And we're not talking about a physical swords and guns. We're talking about an ideological battle that will have some physical consequences, very likely, thrown in jail and so on. But the reality is it is a philosophical battle. Hugh.
I can't quote the words, I wish I could, but there's a text in the Bible that refers to the fact that God remembers where we came from, that our environment that we grew up in, and where we are in our relationship with Him. We must not stand in judgment of people that have not yet joined us based on the Sabbath. Amen. We can't judge what's going on inside their heart. Amen. It is their sincerity in accepting light that has been revealed. There are some people have never, in this world, never heard about the Sabbath. Are they going to be lost because of that? It depends on their relationship with God, with what they know. And that's true of us. We may keep the Sabbath, but if we're not sincerely on God's side in the rest of our life, that keeping the Sabbath doesn't qualify us for heaven itself. We have to be sure we're in line with God. Got to be sure that we allow other people to be where they are. It is a coming event when they'll make a final decision. That event has not yet happened today. And I'm not excusing for anything but Sabbath, but I'm saying be careful. We don't put our finger on those people as being sinners because they don't do it. They have not yet been convicted. The problem is when a person is convicted and says, yes, I understand the commandments, but I don't want to follow them, that's where they've rejected light. But until then, they haven't rejected it if it hasn't been revealed as a conviction in their heart.
Thank you for that good summary. That's very good. Appreciate that, Hugh.
Okay, you ready?
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Another.
Oh,
I just want to add, I'm really glad that you mentioned this about the emphasis on the Sabbath. Let's not forget the other 6 days. You know, we better be Christians consistently, all the time. It's about a relationship. Elder Lee Venden spent a great deal of time emphasizing it's a relationship. It's not about what we do or we don't do. It's important. There's some things we don't want to do and some things we need to do. But at the same time, we need to be careful about being so Seventh-day Adventists that we forget about the other 6 days.
Well, yeah. And that's part of the challenge in this kind of a conversation. It's multifaceted. There are a lot of sides to it. And there's history to it, too, where we kind of come out of this living as though, and you know, we're not the only ones living as though the only day that we become Christian and do the right thing is on Saturday. Well, that happens in Sunday churches, too. You know, there are folk good, loving folk over there, but they have the same problem. I'll be a Christian on Sunday, but the rest of the week, you know, not so much.
I paid my dues. I can
I paid
do my own
dues.
thing. Okay.
I believe that when the Sunday laws are passed, that's when we're going to see the greatest change. The ones going out and the ones coming in.
Yeah, we will.
Absolutely, it will be. So, Richard, there was battle in heaven. How in the world do you have war in heaven?
Yeah, of all places to have war, how does that happen?
It's a war of allegiance, I heard somebody say.
Yeah.
A war
That's
of
really good.
allegiance. That's how that happens. And how could it be that it could happen right in heaven?
Freedom of choice.
I heard it. Freedom of choice. I love this quote here. It says, "The power of choice is closely aligned with the ability to love." So love has to give freedom of choice. Otherwise, it's what? Not love. It's coercion, it's forced, whatever.
Coercion, force,
so
manipulation.
love has to give freedom of choice. So if heaven is built on love, what also exists there? Freedom of choice.
So
that's how you can have war in heaven.
So then my question is, if love is freedom of choice, why did the angels, the devil and his angels, have to leave heaven, be cast out? Why couldn't they just stay?
Somebody want to answer that? Okay, we got it here.
Well, you have two masters then. I'm going to serve this one. I'm
there
going to
you go.
serve that one. I mean, it's...
Then you have, she says, then you have two masters.
And you have, what happens when you have two masters?
You love the one and hate the other. Well, I like to please both, but I somewhere along the way, I've got to make a priority.
Yeah.
Because when they both ask for two different things at the same time.
Well, why isn't everyone going to be saved then? That argument carries right on through.
Oh, there you go.
God has a law. He has rules in his kingdom that we need to obey if we want to live there. But we have a choice not to live there. The angels made their choice. A third of the angels chose. They had freedom of choice. You ever think of an angel having freedom to choose? A third of them chose, and they went with the rebellion. It was a rebellion of ideas, a rebellion of, I don't believe this, I believe something else, I want to do my own thing, I don't want to follow what God has set up. After all, he is the creator. He's the ultimate one who says, this is how I want my system to work. You're welcome to stay here if you agree, but if you don't want to, you're welcome to leave. That's your freedom of choice. They chose to leave because they didn't want to live under the regulations of God's government. It was that simple. We have the same choice today.
Does evil enjoy being around good?
Okay.
If you have a very headstrong mother-in-law and your wife is basically the same, which one do you obey?
Are you speaking from experience? No.
That's good, Mike.
Yeah. So you can't serve the two masters. So that's why. But you know what I found very fascinating is that it brought out in the lesson that that the angels in heaven had to make a decision. Am I going to follow Lucifer and his idea, or am I going to follow God? The exact same decision that you and I make here on earth, they had to make in heaven. The very same decision. I just had never thought about my decision is the same as the angels up in heaven had to make.
Sure.
And it's a decision on ideology.
Yeah. And one other thing on this idea of why they were cast out, we have seen the results of why they were cast out.
Yeah.
They were cast out because evil cannot coexist with good. Given the opportunity, what will evil do to the good?
Just try to destroy it.
Yeah. And ultimately, if allowed, it will destroy it. And we saw that where? At the cross. Okay. We on to the next day?
Yeah, Satan's attack.
Do you have, we're at 10:30.
Yes, we do. Oh, we are. I'm sorry. We need to wrap this up. Wow, we got Revelation 12:17 all dissected and took our time. So.
Well, the good news is we know the result of the battle.
Yes.
Jesus wins.
That's right. That's right. You want to pray for us?
Father in heaven, we are so grateful for your word that gives us understanding as to how things have happened and what is going on even now in the world today. And as we look around us, we are reminded that we are in the midst of a battle. Lord, may we choose to follow you and align our allegiance with you each and every day is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Our special feature today is Donna. You want to come on up? All right, bring them up. We're going to get a little story of a mission trip that took place by these folk for our special feature here. And Donna, I'm going to have to tell you that all of the slides came as PDFs.
Okay, so the pastor put something back. He brought another, Cardiel brought another PowerPoint.
Oh, okay.
And he's got it on the computer.
Okay, good. I tell you what, why don't you introduce your team and I'll go work on the slides. Okay. So, tell.
The slides have already been taken care of. I met with your person.
Okay, so they're ready to go?
Yes, they're ready to go.
I'll just go turn them on then.
Okay.
Okay.
So where do we
Yeah, you can stay down here or you can go up there, whichever one feels more comfortable to you. The slides will come here, so yes.
Whichever way you guys want to do that.
You want to stay down here? Okay. Why don't you introduce your team? You're from one of the local churches, is that correct?
Yes. Okay, my name is Donna Rowe, and I'm going to introduce my team. I'm from Mentone Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay.
And so the next person, I'll let each one of them introduce themselves as we get the slides together.
Good morning. My name is Bertha Tudd. I am from the Paris SDA Community Church.
Good morning. I'm Cordell Briggs from Riverside, Kansas SDA Church.
Yeah, we'll make the announcement.
Good morning.
Thanks.
I am Gloria Webley from Mount Ruberdale SDA Church.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got the slides. Okay.
I got it right here.
You're gonna start.
So this is you come from all different parts of the area here, is that right? Okay, put that one is forward.
Okay.
Now put that mic right up to your lip.
All right. This team, on February 11, we went to Kenya to do a mission. And I was so happy to hear the Sabbath school this morning, especially the lady in the rear, talking about we need to go out and do mission. So you all just ushered us right in. So we have been on a mission, and we went, as I said, to Kakamega, Kenya. And we are actually a part of an organization called Abokim Inc. This organization was developed by a gentleman by the name of Lindsay Thomas Jr. Many of you may know him already. He put together Abokim to teach lay workers how to give Bible studies and win souls to Christ. So the purpose of his cooperation was to reach out, touch, and help the poor, the needy, the destitute, and the helpless persons of Africa and the West Indies, and of the developing countries in the African diaspora. So as I said, his mission was leading souls to Christ. When we got to well, before we got to Kenya, we talked on the phone and by email and all of those kinds of things, and we put the team together. Our president is a person called Giles McGill, and he got 9 of us together, 5 from this area and 4 from the East Coast. These are pictures of our team. As you can see, we have 1 extra person from over there on the top. Well, I guess it's more than one. I guess that's the whole team there. And then down below, we're wearing our Aboukene shirts, as you can see. And then on the left, we still have some of us and some of the workers there in Kenya. Aboukene has linked up with an organization called the Links Incorporated. It's a group of women that get together and do service for others. So the Links is in harmony with Aboukene. I happen to be a member of both organizations. So they partnered with Aboukene to help us fulfill our mission. We have a leg in the Links called the International Trends and Services Organization. It's where a group of seniors like myself and Donna, we get together once a week on Tuesday, take donated t-shirts, and we make diapers out of them. And these are pictures of us sewing, cutting, and putting these diapers together. If you want to join us, we'd love to have you. Keep on going with that. Yeah, this is another picture of the team, the 9 of us that really pulled this mission off. Okay, our first stop was at the Kakamega prison, and Donna will tell you about that.
Okay, so I would take over. We only have 15 minutes, and so I'm going to be quick, but if some of you want to have more dialogue with me, I do come over here on Sabbath afternoons for your study group. But the prison, Kakamega, we got a request at Kakamega prison where we did hygiene kits, diapers, clothes, and we gave bar soaps to the men. But what was so interesting, there was about 100 of the women in the prison. And in the prison, they can keep their children up to 4 years. So there was babies there. They needed diapers. They needed underwear, bras and underwear. They needed all those things. And of course, we brought all those things to them in Kakamega prison. We ministered to them, and we met their needs. And that was a need that they needed. So they needed diapers. They needed other things. We brought them books, education materials. We brought them dental supplies and all of that. And the men, the request for the men, there's over 1,000 men. The request for the men were to have some, they asked us for some soap, some bar soap. So we gave them over 1,000 bar soaps. So the next one up is the natural remedies, in which Bertha would talk about how she did with that.
Yes, it was 2 of us. Dolores, she's not here today, but along with me, we taught them, the lay workers, we were teaching them natural remedies they could do when they go into the homes of the people that they were trying to reach for Christ. You might see someone sick and need some attention until they can get further help. So this is what we did. We did natural remedies. Dr. Donna Rowe actually went through the ministry of healing training with the lay workers, and then I was doing the demonstrations along with Dolores. And some of the main needs that were identified there was malaria treatment. It was also respiratory illnesses and also joint and muscle type of discomfort. So that's what we focused our natural remedy classes on. And we actually did charcoal poultice There was a gentleman there who had a finger that was swollen and tender, and we actually put a charcoal poultice on him, and the next day he came back just showing us, oh my God, he was so happy to get the relief. We also talked about onion. These are all vegetables that are in their country and things that they can get to help to live, to help them in their health. So you saw all that we did, and we had a great time there preparing each of the demonstrations with cabbage and cabbage juice and things like that. It was really a blessing, and it was very rewarding for them to come back and thank us for what we had shared with them.
We also donated some clothes for the homeless boys and gave out Bibles. One of our workers that we have working with us, we noticed the situation that he's in, and so we're constantly trying to work with Christopher. He's an Abakeem worker, and we're working with him to get him a motorbike and some other things. We also did eyeglasses. Different people here in the United States donated us eyeglasses, those reading glasses. And so we did that also with them. This is the reading chart that we had. And we also had some evangelistic campaigns. We don't call them crusades anymore. We had campaigns at 2 sites. And 2 of our ordained pastors from the United States worked with us. Dr. Tomasi, who had been with Dr. Lindsay Thomas for years in the ministry. And so each night we had 2 sites of the campaigns. And so Bertha and Dolores, they did the health nuggets at each one of those sites. And Gloria and myself, we delivered diapers for the babies, because they don't have that. We think, what we have here, but when you go over there, they just don't have it. Okay, so now we want to do the education and training. The campaign continues, so you can see where we have the diapers, handing out the diapers to the various people at the various sites. And now we want to hand it over to Dr. Briggs here with his educational.
Yes, thank you. What the ladies did not mention is that they're all healthcare professionals. The California contingency of Abakeem is healthcare professionals. I'm the only one who's not. I'm the educator, a new component of the mission. And I had the opportunity to present to the lay pastors as well as the first day pastors how to structure a presentation. I wouldn't speak about how to structure a sermon. I'm an educator, not a pastor, but the components, many of them are similar. So we talked about how to prepare a presentation, and so I worked with both the lay pastors and the first day pastors. A wonderful experience. We also had an opportunity on that Friday to take a picture of both groups combined. And as you can see from the slides, we even had women participating in the training. This is another slide where I had never had an interpreter who was interpreting Swahili. Well, I don't know Swahili, and it was just wonderful working with Pastor Ennis. I also had an opportunity to attend 2 of the schools, the Chip Y Academy. Years ago, it had a college component, but it no longer does as a result of COVID and some other issues. But you're looking at the environment where the primary students were, and I had an opportunity to meet with them. I gave a presentation, workshops to the high school students on, well, I had always been curious about what might be the response of African students to to poetry written by black poets here in America. And so I had an opportunity to conduct workshops on the poetic responses from the motherland to black America. It was an exciting dynamics. What you're looking at in the far right is, this is a science lab. A tremendous amount of work needs to be done with the facilities. I won't go into that, but the facilities really need a lot of work, and I had an opportunity to assess the facilities. You're looking at the dormitories in which the students lived. I understand. I too felt that way, okay? And what you're looking at is the facility, the restroom facility for the faculty and staff. And I won't say that I had an opportunity, but I did have the experience of having to go and use the restroom. Now you're looking at the restroom facilities for the students. So you could see that there's a tremendous amount of work. I also visited with the other academy. These are the primary students, and then as we were there with the board chair and the head teacher, the students actually sang for us.
So the rest will go really fast. We went to Barrington University, one of our universities, and they requested the professor requested some equipment for nursing programs and trying to recruit us. Then we went to Jawaba as a camp for disabled children. We gave them hygiene kits, dental training, toothbrushes, coloring books, and clothes. So there's a great need because they have orphanages there. And we also went in Nairobi. We went to motherly care. Was one of the ones that Dr. Lindsay took care of. And this is Valley Glen Academy, where we donated clothes and toys. We purchased food. The number one issue, I was told by a journalist, for Africa is hunger. And the number two is contaminated water. So this is the motherly care, the orphanage that we went to. And this is the Days for Girls, those things that I focus on, because the women, and young women, they miss a lot of days from work and school because they don't have Menzies pads that we have. So we developed, some of you can go on and look Days for Girls for Kenya, and you can find the story of the person who developed the kits for them. So we brought them those kits. We were able to purchase them over there and bring at least over 200 women those Days for Girls kits. They're about $10 a piece. And this is the site where we went to that make it. We also went to Kibera. That's the second largest slum in the world. Our academy and one of our churches is right on the border near to that as we went in. So we went and visited that, and we visited the academy, and we donated $250 for food to the academy because they say that some come and they just don't have food. So $250 would take care of 3 months of food. $250 would take care of a person for a whole year for school expenses. So these are the total people that we helped. And so as we close this out, I can say in the ministry of healing, my favorite chapter is God saved me, and he saved each one of us so that we all can serve our fellow men. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna, Dr. Donna, and all of your participants. Thank you very much. It's nice to see work still going on in the mission field, and we appreciate their dedication to that. So if any of you want more information, I think they'll still be around, and you can contact them. If you want to make a donation, I think, to their efforts, they'll deal with you on that. So we'll take a break for the church service at this point.